So today, actually, I was filming season 7. And in the middle of filming season 7, as I'm switching sets and all that fun stuff, I go on Twitter and, like many of you, I witnessed what's to be the new Thomas Wood and Railway line. Now, Thomas and Friends Wood, like we've heard about for a little bit now, we actually saw what it looked like, which, uh, it's so strange that they're actually releasing that. It doesn't look like it's a prototype. It doesn't look like, oh, we might not release it. No, it looks like it's actually in the store. And I have you probably are looking at the picture of it right now. If you haven't seen it already, take a good look at it. I'll link the guy who found it in the description. But yeah, that's the new Thomas. That's the new Thomas. And it's so strange to me because as a kid, I started collecting Thomas like right before they made that switch in 2002 when they changed it. Like I collected it for a year or two before that. And then that big change came and it's like, wow, these new items are so updated. And Thomas, they didn't give him the stripes right away, but eventually he gets the stripes. And sure, the last year or two they haven't been great. We've been seeing the smaller faces, and a lot of people dislike that, and understandably so. But it's so strange because I try to look at the positive. I try to think, what is Mattel thinking? Because I always try to think that when I see that Thomas Wood and Railway, or now Thomas and Friends Wood, as I see what they are doing, changing things up that we've been accustomed to for a while, I try to think of the business perspective. Does this make business sense? Example, when they had bogies, they changed them to plastic. Now it seems like some characters have plastic bogies, some don't. I think that's fine. I think the plastic bogies are so much cheaper, and to me, it's just a minuscule part of what the item is. Like, who cares if the bogies are plastic or not? I know people do, but at the end of the day, that part being plastic's fine. I think the engine itself, as long as that's wooden, and it's called Thomas Wooden Railway. That doesn't mean everything about the item needs to be wooden, because it's impossible to create these trains if it's not having at least some plastic in it. But now Thomas and Friends Wood, literally, you can see it, the entire side looks like wood. And to me, I don't even know where to begin with this, because for one, we just saw a picture. I'd like to actually see it in my hands and get a nice look at it before I can make a final decision. That being said, I'll be honest, it doesn't look that good, and I can't understand Mattel's logic behind this. From what I've heard, from what you've probably heard too, they wanted to show that these trains are actually made out of wood, because a lot of people, they didn't think that. They don't look like they're made of wood, and I honestly can understand that. When you buy these items for the first time, there's really not a trace of wood on them, and until you start playing with them can you see that yes, these are made out of wood. And I can see where Mattel's issue for that. You're advertising this Thomas Wooden Railway. Somebody walks up to you and is like, that's not wood. That's plastic. I'm not going to get it. And while there definitely is plastic on the items, you want to show that, yes, this is Wooden Railway. And I think they could have done it better. I saw some images, you've seen it in Rio, where the top part is just not painted, that it's wood. And I was kind of expecting that's what it would be like. I think they could get away with having some areas of these trains not be painted and just be shown as wood. But they didn't go that route. Instead, they decided to take the entire side part out and not paint it, which I just don't understand. Because at the end of the day, when you purchase something like this, when you purchase a Thomas Wooden Railway, a Thomas and Friends Wood, whatever it is, when you purchase one of those, you don't want it to be the exact replica of what you see on TV, but you want it to be pretty close. However much money you're paying, whether it's 10, 15, 20, or even more than that for these items, you want it to look very similar to what you see on television. And I think by making the sides just not painted whatsoever, I think that's really hurting the brand. From what I could also tell is they had a Thomas logo on the side, which that looks really bad in my opinion, especially if that's the case. But I just don't understand what Mattel's logic is behind this. In the past I could. When they were making more and more plastic into the wooden railway, honestly, I'm all for that. In a business sense, because to me, if you can save money, make it plastic and still make it a good item, then why not do that? Paint, you can save it. I think people get really upset about, oh, they are making it more plastic. They are making less paint. They don't want to paint as much. Uh, you need to understand that that stuff costs a lot. If you can decide that you're not going to use wood and instead use plastic for part of an item, however many of those you make, you're using plastic instead of wood. That's such a cheaper option. When you're not painting a part of the area, or where you're not using as many colors and just using 2 or 3 instead of 5 or 10, you're saving a lot of money. You're not having to get special orders of different paint that you might only use for a few items. And when you're not painting the entire thing, you are saving money. And I can see that business sense. I think people just are like, oh, that stuff's so cheap. It's not cheap. It adds up really fast. Trust me on that. It adds up really fast. So I can understand that. But at the end of the day, you still want this to be a good representation of what you're seeing on the Thomas and Friends show. Thomas and Friends and Thomas and Friends Wood. Like, if you had any doubt that Thomas Wooden Railway was from Thomas and Friends Wood should end those doubts. Like, you should be able to see, well, this is obviously from Thomas. So to me, the biggest problem, the biggest issue I have with this is that you look at it and it just doesn't look like the Thomas you see on TV. And I know that it's not just going to be Thomas. I can only imagine when we see Percy, Gordon, James, Edward, when we see all those other engines and they have sides like Thomas does, it's not going to look good. You're not going to be able to really pick these engines out from the other. Now, before I end, the last thing I want to talk about is a lot of people are like, you got to boycott this, don't purchase, don't support. We don't want to give our money to Mattel. See, I don't agree with that. In part because even the small people, even the people that are going to be listening and watching this video and giving feedback, we're such a small portion of that. And yes, I do understand that if you can get, like, let's say 1,000 people, I have about 2,000 subscribers. So if half of you were to not purchase any Mattel items, that would make an impact, but not that big of an impact. I think by us boycotting it, it's not going to do much in the grand scheme of things. Personally, will I be boycotting it? No, I don't think so. If I see something that I'm interested in getting, I'll probably get it. This Thomas, if I see a cheap set where Thomas is in it, I have no problem getting that. That's how I got my CGI Thomas. I got it like in a $25 set with a Percy, a Caboose, and Track, which if you were to separate those out, the value was much more than $25. So if I see a deal like that, of course I'm going to do that. And if I see a new item come out that I'm like, I'd like to add that to my collection, I'm going to do it. I'm not going to boycott it because they changed the design. However, I think this is a big point in Mattel, because this is a big make or break. This is a redesign of the Wooden Railway line. They've literally changed the name from Thomas Wooden Railway to Thomas and Friends Wood. One way or another, Wooden Railway as we know it is done. Thomas Wooden Railway is over. It is no more. We are now on Thomas and Friends Wood. If Thomas and Friends Wood last, well, Thomas Wooden Railway didn't, so this is a new thing. However, since to me this is like Mattel is okay, this is your second chance. If you do well, we'll keep you. Will they do well? Honestly, I'd lean more towards no. I think when you have so many other lines, when you have Trackmaster, you have Adventures, you have Minis that can all connect together, and then you have Thomas and Friends Wood that do not. If this isn't an immediate success, I can see Mattel cutting bait with this and getting rid of it. But that's just me. As I said, I don't think this will last. I think they'll give it 2 or 3 years. and either do another redesign, which I don't think will happen, but could, or they'll just end the brand altogether, which I think that's going to happen. Which is sad because, like many of you, I grew up with this. I've had these items for years now. But that's my thoughts. Tell me yours in the comments below. Thank you for watching. This is Percy number 6, and I'll be back to you next with the Thomas and Friends Wooden Railway Collection video. Trust me, you will be excited about that. Thank you for listening today. Goodbye.